Hi, my name's Paul Brady, and I'm the Director of Inbound Marketing at the Center for National Investing. I'd like to talk to you today about an interview with Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell that happened on 60 Minutes recently. In this 60 Minutes interview, Powell discusses the impact of coronavirus on the economy and adds a few of his thoughts on how to mitigate that impact. Now, as everyone is aware, the U.S. economy is facing its most dire test since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The expectation is that at least 25% or more of the American public will be out of work. In addition, small businesses without the proper help will likely fold and declare bankruptcy. And all of this, of course, will lead to a probable skyrocketing in foreclosures and personal bankruptcies as well. In this crisis, job losses add a particularly unpleasant element: lack of health care. With millions of Americans not covered already and millions more losing health coverage because of job loss, we're facing a public health emergency for millions of Americans with no health care during a life-threatening pandemic. At the Center for National Investing, we've talked on several occasions about how to use excess production, or what we call market surplus, to help pay for things like health care, free public college education, a livable wage, and debt and tax relief for all Americans. In the description below and above, if you're on YouTube, you'll see a link to another video where we talk about national investing and how market surplus can help pay for these programs in detail. In brief, however, national investing accomplishes one important thing, and it provides the United States with an almost unlimited capability to not only fund programs I previously mentioned, but also address emergency spending when needed without raising debt or causing inflation. Now you might ask yourself, how is this possible? And that's a great question. It's possible because national investing is based on an economic theory that has already successfully been used in our economy and worldwide to prevent or end recessions. That theory is called quantitative easing. So let's see what Chairman Powell says about the current situation. Take a listen.
Has the Fed done all it can do?
Well, there's a lot more we can do. We're not out of ammunition by a long shot. No, there's really no limit to what we can do with these lending programs that we have.
So let's think about that statement for a moment. Powell said that there is no limit to what the Fed can do with lending programs. In fact, in response to this crisis, practically overnight, Powell offered approximately $3 trillion in lending to banks, businesses, cities, and states to prevent an economic catastrophe. But where did all that money come from? Again, let's take a listen to that 60 Minutes interview.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally. And we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply.
So as Powell just said, the Federal Reserve has the power to digitally create money or add money to an economy fairly easily. The Federal Reserve can use this capacity at any time, not just emergencies, to digitally print money as part of quantitative easing action. Now with national investing, again based on quantitative easing, it would not only be possible to pay for many of the things that he mentions, but also pay for a lot of things he does not mention. For example, providing health care to every American all the time, not just in emergency situations. Interestingly, Powell discusses addressing debt at some point, but not during a recession, where creating debt to bolster the economy is preferable to the alternative, which we assume is economic collapse. But what he doesn't mention is that the Fed has the power to resell the debt on the open market or even hold on to the debt and eventually retire it. But has this been done before? Absolutely. During the Obama administration, the Fed, in concert with the Treasury, created debt in order to fund the Cash for Clunkers program, and then essentially retired that debt. By doing so, the Fed helped put money into the economy, but did so without raising the deficit or causing inflation to rise. This is a very important point because the Federal Reserve will often rely on quantitative easing in times of emergencies. But in better economic times, they regard it as the poor cousin to conventional economic theory. So, where they essentially ignore it and say it causes problems. However, the truth is there's precedent set by the Federal Reserve, and on numerous occasions where there were economic calamities, in 2008 and again in 2020, both the Federal Reserve as well as central banks around the world, including the UK and Japan, have used quantitative easing to pull their economies out of recession without raising their deficit or causing inflation. Now, whether economists agree with quantitative easing being used like programs for cash for clunkers or not, the precedent has been set and it has been done successfully. So the question remains, how can the Federal Reserve help millions of Americans sequestered in their homes during a pandemic, as well as all the businesses facing severe financial strain? The answer to that question is, of course, national vesting. Although not mentioned by name, Chairman Powell talks about exactly what he would do to help Americans and small businesses. Let's take a listen to what he says.
And what sort of support, in your view, do you think the Congress would want to consider?
I don't give them advice on particular policies, but I would say, if I may, that policies that help businesses avoid avoidable insolvencies and that do the same for individuals. Keep workers in their homes, keep them paying their bills, keep families solvent.
So, although Powell didn't mention quantitative easing, what he said was nevertheless amazing. He talked about funding small businesses to avoid bankruptcy and paying every American money to keep them in their homes and paying their bills and keep the economy moving. Until such a time, we assume that the pandemic will be over and things will go back to normal. Keep individuals and families solvent. That's the operative phrase here by Powell. Now, in this crisis, that is exactly the right thing to do. The only major difference between what Chairman Powell said and what we believe at the Center for National Vesting is that we believe national vesting based on quantitative easing should be used to help pay for these programs. My name is Paul Brady. I'm the Inbound Marketing Director at the Center for National Vesting. And again, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this. And please don't forget to like our video and subscribe to our channel by hitting that little bell beneath this video on YouTube to get future notifications of when we drop a video. Also, be sure to check below in the description to see the links to the videos I discussed previously that provide additional details on our programs, including national vesting and market surplus. Thank you for your time.